Yeah, so yeah, you had a slight miss here, but things are getting better, aren't they, when it comes to shipping?
I would say so. Of course, the first quarter was not satisfactory, but it was as expected, at least for us. What is happening in the first quarter is that all the contracts get renegotiated with the customers. So you see that in the beginning of the quarter, the Europe contracts get renegotiated, and then as the quarter progresses, the Pacific trade is renegotiated, and some of the North-South trades are renegotiated. So you see really a trend upwards to the end of the quarter, where you truly see the reflection of the new contract rates in the business. And that effect is still to come, and that's why we're so positive about the full year estimate.
Because you book things later, it takes time to appear on the balance sheet. That's essentially what it is, isn't it? So, I mean, with activity in the end of the quarter, it's not going to be showing up until the next quarter, is it?
In the beginning of the year, a lot of the volume still moves on the contracts that were negotiated last year. Yeah. So the new contracts need to take effect, but that's why we're so positive about this turnaround of $1 billion improvement in the bottom line.
So is that pickup sustainable going forward? Are we going to see an increase in freights?
We are seeing increases in freights, definitely. I would also say that the underlying demand is actually developing quite healthily. So we see 1 to 3% growth on the Europe trade. We see 4% growth on the Pacific trade. So the underlying economies are doing well, and trade is also doing well at the moment.
You've renegotiated the Trans-Pacific contracts, and that route is seen as a barometer for global trade there. What can you tell us about perhaps some of the tailwinds or the headwinds when it comes to that?
The trade is growing healthily. Like I said, 4% trade growth is pretty good. The US economy is developing well as well. So we've definitely seen an increase in prices on that trade.
I know, I'm going to bring up a chart. It's the Baltic Dry. I know it doesn't really reflect what you do in particular, because it's a different type of thing going on here. But it does indicate essentially the trend, does it not? And the trend is, at the moment, going up gradually from 2016. We're not up to the 2013, 2014 levels, but are we getting there?
Well, I would certainly say that supply of ships at the moment is really, really tight. So there's very little ships around actually for spot chartering, which is showing the strength of the underlying demand at the moment.
So is this going to be the classic case when all these shipping companies go and well, sign up for new ships to be built and then find themselves with overcapacity in, let's say, 3 years down the road?
Well, we can only judge what we see at the moment. The total order book of the shipping industry at the moment is about 14% of the fleet, compared to 20% of the fleet 1 year ago. So we're seeing that the percentage of new orders in relation to the fleet existing size is actually reducing.
Well, given that supply-demand picture, what does that mean for freight rates? We did see an increase last year quite decisively, especially during a time of some pain for the shipping space.
So, like I said, the contracts that are negotiated this year, the Europe trade negotiations, which took place in the beginning of the year, showed significant increases. The Pacific trade negotiations, which just ended around about the end of the quarter one, the beginning of April, are also showing significant increases. And most importantly, the North-South trades, the emerging markets, Africa, Latin America, are also showing significant improvements in revenues. And that effect will phase in the rest of the year.
Tell me something, Robert. What is your strongest business at the moment? What is the strongest route? Where are you seeing the most demand currently?
Certainly, I would say the East-West trade. So Americas and Europe are the strongest trades at the moment. Middle East is also rebounding quite healthily.
And I want to take a look at it as well at the consolidation that's been happening in the industry. There are, of course, plans to integrate Hamburg Süd into Maersk, but do you see more appetite for this? Do you see more consolidation happening?
Well, there's a lot happening already. The plans that are in place right now, which are mostly started last year or in the beginning of this year, they still need to take effect. So we still need to finalize the consolidation of Hamburg Süd by the end of this year, when the regulatory approval comes in. And there's a lot of other lines that are consolidating as well. And these processes usually take time. There is more opportunity for consolidation still in the industry, and so we would expect more of that activity to happen also in the coming years.
Now, I've had one guest, we discussed him last time as well. He described Hanjin's demise as being the Lehman event for the shipping industry. Has it really worked out that way? Do you think that Hanjin perhaps was a player too many in the business?
Well, the supply-demand equation is more or less back to where it was before, but I would say that it's a healthy balance at the moment between supply and demand.
And as you look ahead with that healthy supply and demand balance there, do we see a ratcheting up in freight rates and container rates, etc.?
We've seen it already.
So you think it's topped out then? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think there's further potential, but we're seeing a very positive trend.
As you noted, you're seeing healthy growth when it comes to Middle East routes. Europe is looking well. But given the shift that we're seeing potentially in trade patterns, especially with this rising regionalism, what we see some impact then on the container industry?
Regionalization is of course a trend that is important. We have a very big regional operation ourselves called MCC Transport. But still, let's not forget that global trade is about 60% of global GDP. And globalization is a trend that is unstoppable. So we still think that with the growth of world population, with the growth of GDP in the global economy, international trade will be a big factor in the success of the global economy.
So tell me something, you know, you've got to make the business more efficient. Every downturn that you have to, of course, clear the decks, cut costs, and one of the ways you do that is through, let's say, technology being one thing. You've got, of course, the acquisition and integration of Hamburg Süd, that's already taking place. But tell us about digitalization within your business right now. I mean, how much is blockchain, for instance, helping you?
Well, there's a lot of developments at the moment where there's innovation taking place in the industry, some of it coming from outside our industry, and we are certainly starting to set the trend from within our industry. Blockchain is a development where we see that there are significant efficiency gains in how trade is done. So if you look at what blockchain can do for the documentation flow that is associated with foreign trade, it can simplify it and it can digitalize it to the extent that there's a secure
But wasn't it
exchange.
almost digitalized before? You know, it's just tweaking at it a bit.
Well, we did the test from Kenya to Rotterdam, where we had a stack of about this high of paperwork that still needed to be physically processed. If you can digitize that and make it available to everyone in a secure environment that is encrypted, I think that is a big step forward.
So the efficiency is there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, what else is going on here? How do you see this industry shaping up in the next 5 years? Will there be more consolidation, or do you think we're done with that? You know, Maersk remaining the big player, the big boy out there?
Well, we will certainly aim to remain market leader, both in profitability.
Well, you would say that, of course,
and
yeah.
size. But certainly we see that there is further consolidation, and as, like I said, there's the digitalization of the customer interface that is certainly going to be a disruptive innovator for the industry as a whole.